Feet to the Fire Radio presents Christianity, the Red Letter Edition. We are here to strip away the denominational dogma, the religious theater, and the cultural masks and go straight to the source. We are examining the teachings of Jesus through the lens of the original Hebrew and Greek, the historical reality of the first century, and the absolute necessity of applying these truths to our lives today. We aren't here to coddle the ego or rehearse safe church-approved talking points. We are here to seek the truth via the path of non-contradiction. Jesus said, "You cannot serve God and Mammon." In today's episode, we will discover what is Mammon. Jesus' words were not the historical critique of the Pharisees. It is a mirror to our own hearts. It is time to start preparing our hearts for the kingdom by putting our feet to the fire, kindled by the red letters of Jesus Christ. The views expressed in the following show are of the host, the guest, and the callers. The content of the following show, its accuracy, authenticity, and the ramifications of the use or application of said content is the responsibility of those speaking and listening, not the broadcast medium.
And now, live from Chicago, here is the Black Knight of Talk Radio, James Arthur Yancek.
All right, we're back and we are live, Feet to the Fire. I'm your host, James Arthur Yancek, and we are continuing in our series of Christianity, the Red Letter Edition, which the intro says is about the finding out what Christianity is from Jesus' words, working outward. And we had a couple. We had an intro, and then we had last week's, which was talking about hypocrisy. And one of the themes of the hypocrisy at that time was how people dealt with, let's say, riches, wealth, power, and so forth and so on. And so there's a real important word that I found when I was reading this that sticks out. Let me step back for a minute. I got this. I'm going to say gift. Hopefully it's a gift. Then I could read something and something will stick out. It's like if you have a highlighter and highlights it. Now, I don't know why per se. I go, well, I got to check into this. I got to look into this. And when you look at the NASB version from 1971, they had the word mammon in there. And here's the quote. Let me go to the notes. The actual quote is, "You cannot serve God and Mammon." And the newer translations use like wealth. And that's not wrong, right? But it's not enough. When you translate, you have to take a concept in another language, and it might not be fully representative in the next language. So you have to do the best you can. And I'm not criticizing them, I couldn't do better. But some of the translators, and I think wisely, would take the original word and leave it in. And then have footnotes and say, well, it means like wealth and power and stuff like that. And I liked how they did that. And it caught my eye, and I looked up Mammon. I did this a while ago, and I redid it again, and I found even more this time. And what I do in this series here, what I want to do is go back and find out what does that mean to the people who said it and heard it in that culture. Is there ramifications, is there qualifications within that culture to further add color to what that word means? And then bring it forward and try to understand it in our cultural terms. And the Hebrew Aramaic word, mammon, by the way, I'm going to butcher these Hebrew words, so I'm not even going to try and read them too much. And also, I want to nip it in the bud. I spell mammon with two M's, M-A-M-M-O-N. Now, everywhere it's written, it's one N and one M. And I literally did not notice that till right going on the show. So don't write me and say about the word, because I've always put down two M's. So that's all I'm going to say about that. But So it's derived from the root word, which I can't pronounce it because it's Hebrew, and I got it listed on the screen here up on top, and it's MN. You know, the Hebrew letters in the Bible are just consonants. There's no vowels. In the old days, if you will, all they did was write down the consonants, kind of like notes to remember what you're supposed to have memorized. And so the vowels were memorized and the consonants were reminders. And later on, in later manuscripts, they put little pointers in, little doodads, jottle and tittle and all this stuff like this, which was said, to remember the vowels. And so the root, this is pretty interesting to me, the Greek word, or the Hebrew word, is the same root word as amen. So you're talking about truthful, faithfulness, reliability. Historically, mammon was a neutral legal economic term for that which can be trusted. So it started out that it's a trusted, there's an authority there's somebody in charge, you can be trusted, there's something that's reliable. This would have started out as. And the Greek and the Hebrew, or the Greek when they imported it, they did not translate memos into the standard Greek word for wealth, but retained the Semitic term. The gospel writers signaled this, that was specifically recognizable as a foreign system of reliability, a rival structure to the kingdom of God and the Greek-speaking Gentiles who are now being warned. So it kind of transmitted into the state or the culture or the power centers and so forth. Jesus refines mammon as a rival to God because it shares the linguistic roots of reliability and faith. Jesus exposes that the heart treats material stability as a parody of God's faithfulness. So what Jesus is kind of doing, he's taking the word and he's kind of parodying it. Like you can't serve God and the power structure on earth. The people who trust in mammon are essentially saying that this is my amen. This is what I count on. You can't count on God, and you can't count on the world power structure, the world wealth structure, political structure, and so forth like that. So he's kind of putting this in there like going, whoa, there's this split. People depend on wealth, job, your power structures, so you can work, and your food and all, whatever. And Jesus was saying you cannot serve God and mammon, the power structure of the world, the earth, because you will love one and hate the other, vice versa. You will serve one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. The cultural idea in the first century, making sure, okay, is the religious elites have become trustees of the temple, and their hearts have shifted from service to the Creator to securing their status through the mammon, the assets of the system. So you have in the religious area, Jesus was criticizing the scribes and Pharisees because they don't trust in God. They trust in the coffer. They trust in the money that's given there, or what they got, or how they can get out of or get into receiving that sustenance. They didn't just depend on the Creator for it. They were looking at and Jesus says in Luke 20, beware of the scribes of Pharisees, beware of the scribes who like to walk around in long robes, personal greetings in the marketplaces, chief seats in the synagogues, places of honors at banquets, who devours widows' houses. In other words, they take a widow's house for appearance sake, give prayers. And it said in other areas, I have a concordance to go along with this in the notes, but it said in other areas that they would say, for example, I'd help out my mother and father, but all my money's been given to God, so I can't use it to help them because it's already been given to God. And really, they're the ones that minister the wealth that's been given to God. So they end up becoming, it's one way to keep your wealth. It's like starting a foundation and then heading it, and then you could take trips in the foundation's name and not have to pay taxes. Well, this is, the whole concept of it. And he's focusing on inside the church. Now, we all know that today we have mega churches where you have pastors on TV, with multi-million-dollar houses and all this stuff, and it's the same kind of deal. And also, if you look at politicians, I thought about this. Beware of the scribes, where the politicians would like to walk around, show off, get personal greetings, get gifts, get the front row seats, etc. And that's the idea of this mammon, this world system of power and wealth that you depend on rather than God, and it will suck you in. Now, this is why I want to get to this part. This part is something that it really kind of struck me when I was pondering it, and I refined it. The modern application of our age is mammon is metastasized into materialism. So if I had to pick one word for mammon, I would say materialism. But it's a little bit more than that, because you have the power structure that goes along with the materialism. The worship of matter. So you have, instead of worshiping the creator, you worshiping what is created. Think of the term worshiping is like worthship. What is worth to you? What's worth your attention, your honor, your love? And it's going to be the material and the power. So and also I've noticed that science and technology has kind of become the new counterfeit to the Holy Spirit. It's going to solve the problem. It's going to be the inspiration. Heck, with AI coming out, you're going to now be able to, if the AI has been programmed to be directly honest or whatever, it's a good thing to have. But if it's been given to kind of skewer the answers, skewer what you're looking for this, we'll kind of steer you over that way. Now you're being misled by the, quote, spirit of materialism. That counterfeit spirit offers the guidance, comfort, empowerment as a substitute for God. It provides two dangerous mechanisms. This to me is like, I was doing this stuff and this stuff's popping in my head and I'm kicking it around, and it really, the two things, if you look in, and I'm sure I'm jumping ahead because I have this all written out, and but when I talk, I just go off on tangents. But it says, blessed are the poor. And you think, well, how could the poor be blessed? If you have, money, you can do things. You can do good things. But if you're not in the mammon system, if you're not wealthy, if you're not powerful, if you don't have friends in high or low places, what have you, there's two things that wealth and that power and in the mammon. There's two things that it does. And these to me are like, wow, important. Wealth will insulate you. Wealth will allow the user to bypass the spiritual frictions, in other words, trials and growth, God uses to develop our kingdom character. And you have the verse here in Matthew 19. Jesus said to the disciples, I say to you, it will be hard for a rich person to enter the kingdom of heaven. And again, I say to you, it's easier for a camel to go through an eye. I'm skipping ahead. Camel will go through an eye of a needle than a rich person go into heaven. And it's like disciples heard this and they were astonished because they're thinking like, well, the rich people, man, they could do all this stuff. They could give money to the poor. They can, they're leaders, and they were kind of upset by this. And they said, who could be saved? And looking to them, Jesus said to them, with people, this is impossible. With God, all things are possible. Mammon, people, not, you look at mammon, not God, it's with humans, it's with people, it's impossible. It's impossible to develop the kingdom character, it's impossible to have salvation and all this. But with God, it's all possible. So that's one of the things that I've thought about. Very important. If you have wealth, you can avoid the responsibility of spiritual growth. Now, you can do it, right? It's the saying that it's easier for a camel to go to an eye through a needle. I'm taking it more of like a expression, like a colloquial kind of expression. Like easier to, it's easier for someone to go to lift up a house than to do that. I mean, it's a saying to show difficult. But so number one thing with the power, being in power, is to be able to avoid to do what you need to do what's right, to grow into God's kingdom, to do that thing. It's easy to circumvent it with wealth. If you have to take care of something and it's manual labor, you missed something you wanted to do, you got to do this thing here, and you have to do it yourself. Inside that process of that troublesome item, could be a spiritual growth lesson teaching in that particular thing. By being there, doing what you're supposed to do, you meet someone else, and there's an interaction there. I mean, there's a theory I want to get into another time, complexity theory, that things are so complex in the universe that the big, powerful front ones, the big cogs in the front, which are obvious, right? We put all that focus on that and that power, and that's what counts. And these little cogs and wheels over here, you can't even see them. They're buried in between. Hey, what can they do to this big wheel? But in the gearing of the structure, and, this is why old-time watchmakers were incredible, by putting all these various gears together. There's a little gear here. So that goes goofy, the whole thing goes goofy, right? So that's the number one thing, very important, is that wealth and power, the power system of, for example, I can give you a real-world example right in my own neighborhood. This knucklehead across the street ends up, he's a knucklehead, okay? He ends up beating up his girlfriend, got mad, because she wanted to split up. I don't know what the reason is. Beats her up bad, gets arrested. While out on bail, beats her up again. So now he's before the court with 2 assaults. Mother's got connections in the judicial system, a lot of money. They buy big money lawyers. They make the deal where he has to be convicted. He can't get out of that because it was so obvious. But he doesn't have to serve the time as long as he goes to anger management and he doesn't get in trouble in 2 years. 2 years, boom, you're in jail. But if you don't get it, and so now if it would have been me, first time I wouldn't have beat her up. So, but I don't got the money or the power to hook up, so I'd be in prison. So you could you go out and look at the poor of all colors, of all countries, of all races, and they're in jail, while the person who has power and wealth is out of it. So they avoid, in this case, he's avoiding the character change to stop doing these things and also paying the price for it. So he's avoiding that with money. The second one is really dark, right? When you have power and money, this mammon, the mammon system of mammon is what I'm calling it. Once you really get that mammon word in your head, it's like, it makes all this sense. There's a whole level of dark privilege that's offered you that you couldn't do. I mean, the system provides vile options, moral exemptions for the elite, facilitating hidden depravity, Epstein-style corruption. Think of Epstein, which Jesus warns will ultimately be brought to light. That's another thing, is that you think you can hide under there, and at front you can. You can, but all things come out. Now, all things will come out in the end. If you die, for example, when I woke up one day and I heard the news, I was sitting there having coffee and heard the news that Epstein died, and I just got a flash in my head, I get these every so often. It's a vision, but it's short, but the duration of it is irrelevant because what the information it carries is a lot, right? And I was upset the whole day. I mean, I have no sympathy for the man, what he did. No, it was totally eyes open doing this, right? But I had a vision of him waking up on the other side. So wakes up on like a slab, like a marble slab. This is in my vision, marble slab. He wakes up, and as he opens his eyes, now he might have been in my vision. He's thinking there's nothing to wake up to, right? So it's like he got out of, whether it be by murder or suicide, he got out of what he had to do. So he wakes up, and he's this gargantuan demonic creature's face is like 2 inches from him. And he opens up his eyes and is like, and he goes, peekaboo, like that. And he screams, he being Epstein, screams the horrible, unbelievable scream of terror inside out. I woke up from that. It was kind of like, it was a waking kind of vision dream, but it was like, I was like, and the whole day I was messed up, right? Nothing on this universe is worth that, okay? So when you talk about doing things, getting things, nothing's worth that. But that's the dark privilege option. When you have the money and you have the connections, hey, come to special parties, special first. They start out with maybe some little drugs, special things, then you get younger. Most of these are guys, I think, they're doing it, but you get a younger woman, then you get the underage woman, and then you get, and you get the drugs that make you crazy. And then once they got you, like on film or tape, now you're their slave. And if you say no, which is the spiritual best thing to do, take whatever happens from that, but do that. So they don't. And so some people they're a slave to them. And some people go like, what the heck? I'm over the edge. I'm past the limit. Let me just dive in all the way. And that dark privilege would not be offered to you unless you had that system of mammon connection. You don't have that power, right? And so somebody who isn't privileged and doesn't have the money is blessed because they have their own temptations to deal with. Stealing, whatever. The ubiquitous adultery and fornication and all this stuff, the perverted stuff. There's stuff enough there without even adding on this whole other layer. No one, and I like this verse because there's kind of like two things here going here. No one lights a lamp and covers it with the container or puts it under a bed because he puts it under the lampstand so others may come and see the light. So it's like if you're doing something, you got to hide it. It's not good. It's not light. I mean, of course, planning a birthday party is okay, but you know what I mean? You're doing around, you're fooling around, you're doing something, whatever it is, insider trading, cheating, underage, drugs, whatever you're doing, you're going to hide it. That tells you right there. If you got to sneak it, no good. If it was light, you'd be putting it out on a lamp. For nothing that's concealed that will not become evident, or nothing that is hidden that will not be known and come to the light. So the warning here is you try to insulate yourself with the system of mammon, and you get the privilege to get out of doing things you need to, and you get the options, the dark options, dark privilege to do things that are evil. It's going to come out. It's going to come out. There's, it's so. Now, another thing about this is there's an aspect of the system of mammon as being limited or temporal or while you're on earth or while you're alive versus the unlimited, which is the eternal. I came up with a conclusion of myself in studying that the Greek language has a tendency to describe things in quality rather than quantity. It's not about the numbers. It's about the quality of it, how bad it is or how good it is, how beautiful it is versus how ugly it is, that type of thing. There's a quality level. And you can tell when you have quality made furniture, it kind of comes out at you, right? It's like you can feel it, you could see it, you could touch it. There's a quality built into it. And if it's a cheap furniture, for example, it's empty. There's no depth to it. It's, break. But, so there's that quality type thing. Now, I want to give you an example, eternal. A lot of people say, talk about eternal life, and it's forever. It's eternal, meaning it's forever, right? Interesting enough, the term forever and ever in the Greek is an age of ages or eon of eons. So how I translate that using this idea of quality is that it's unmeasurable. You can't say we're going to be there for a long time because time is irrelevant. You could be there for ages of ages in a second of our time, 5 seconds of our time. But there, you don't even remember, for example, like when you got there. It's been so long. So it's tricky to use those type of things. I'd like to see quality. So when you say unlimited, you're saying unlimited time, unlimited access, privileges, power, unlimited ability to create, unlimited. That's eternal life, right? That's what that is. Here we have limits to what we do. And if you're going to focus on this life in this limited area, and that's where you're going to put your attention, we got some trouble. Let me read this verse here. And I apologize for my reading because I'm got a little touch of dyslexia, very little. And my eyes just go across the board, and I skip and miss. So if I really didn't have to, as I mentioned, I'm imprisoned in my own prison, partially of mammon, and still working, trying to work toward retiring, and I could put so much more time into this stuff. Lord, please. It's a combination of my fault, my choices, and just bad luck and things happening. Again, everything has a reason. That's why I guess I like the idea about blessed are the poor, because they're going to learn and get that spiritual stuff out of the way, and that's fine with me. But now he said to his disciples, there was a rich man who had a manager. This verse always confused me, and now I understand. There was a rich man who had a manager, and his manager was reported to him as squandering his possessions. And he summoned him and said to him, what is this that I hear of you? Give an accounting of your management, for you can no longer be manager. And the manager said to himself, What am I to do, since my master is taking management away from me? I am not strong enough to dig. I'm ashamed to beg. I don't know what I will do. So that when I am removed from the management positions, people will welcome me into their homes. What can I do? What would I do so that when I'm removed from management, people will welcome me in their homes? So he summoned each one of the master's debtors and began to say to him, how much do you owe my master? And the guy says, 100 jugs of oil. And then he says to him, take your bill, sit down quickly and write 50. He said to another one, and how much do you owe? And he said, 100 cores of wheat. He said to him, take your bill and write 80. And his master complimented the unrighteous manager because he had acted shrewdly. For the sons of this age are more shrewd in relationship to their own kind than the sons of light. And I say to you, make friends for yourself by means of wealth. And that's the word mammon. Make friends of yourself by the means of the system of mammon, as I'm putting it. The wealth of unrighteousness is mammon, so that when it is all gone, they will receive you into eternal dwellings. Now, remember the word eternal, high quality. So I couldn't understand this. I'm like, wow, Jesus is like praising the guy for cheating? And I was thinking about it, and it just came to me. If we use the system of mammon that we're in it, right? I mean, you can go in a cave and not eat and die, and then you're not in the system of mammon, right? But other than that, even if you have your own farm and you're raising your own food, that's great. But there's still taxes involved and responsibilities to the country, like it or not. You can limit your access, your participation in the system of mammon. But if you could use that system that they made, and you're playing by their rules, and you're doing these things this way, and then from the results of that, turn around and do things and use that for these eternal ideas, these righteous ideas. Now, it doesn't mean you go out and rob a bank because the banks are stealing people from it, and then like Robin Hood, and then give it to the poor. Not the point. That's kind of you're pushing the analogy out of its intent, I think. What it's meant to do is use the system of mammon, not for mammon's sake, not for wealth's sake, not for power's sake, not to get out of doing what you're supposed to, not to get into things that are beyond or evil, but to do things for the light of it, to put the light on it. So there are people who literally have left the system. I mean, you look at like I said, the monks. They have monks that live in a cave somewhere, in all their life, and People bring them some food just so they eat. But I like to look at like the Amish, for example. They got a good system where they've pretty much limited any exposing themselves to mammon. Now, they've still got their own problems. They're sinners like everyone else. But if you limit yourself to the system of mammon, you have limited mammon effects. I assert eternal is an actual descriptor of quality. No limitations, including time, not fleeting, very substantive, important, not frivolous. And used in Mark, quote, is essentially saying, use the frivolous, fleeting, temporary tools of mammon for things that are really substantial for the highest long-term goal of what really matters. That's, if I was going to put a sentence out to explain what Jesus is teaching in there, that's what I would say. Use the frivolous, fleeting, temporary tools of mammon for things that are really substantial for the highest long-term good for what really matters. Now you're laying up treasure in heaven because the money's going to be gone, right? You're using the money and you're helping all, but what you've done with it, that help, saving lives, teaching people a trade or seeing their potential and doing what you can with your position and your tools of mammon, if you will, to help them. Not cheating, not stealing, but taking the temporary, frivolous stuff of this world and then applying it to long-term good. In short, the world system uses mammon or the use of promise of power. So the world system uses mammon, power, and wealth, or the promise of privilege to draw one from the focus on God and growth toward the kingdom, toward his kingdom, to literally grow in the opposite direction, enslaving people into its own service. We are to recognize this, and use our time and talents while living within the system of mammon to resist its pathway and move toward the kingdom. To move toward kingdom consciousness and kingdom character in spite of the siren call from mammon. And that's the purpose of being here in life. I mean, a lot of people will say, like, hey, all I want to do is, have a nice time, have some fun. I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't want to harm anybody. I don't want to do anything like that. But it's not the point here. The point is not to win lottery and go hide in a forest somewhere. But boy, does that sound good. It's to, if you say win lottery through the mammon of a righteousness, what do you do with it? How does it apply? Of course, some might say don't even try to play the lottery, and I wouldn't argue with that, but it's the idea whenever you come involved with it. Here's a quote from Matthew. Do not store for yourselves treasure on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in to steal, but store up for yourself treasures in heaven that neither moth or rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, your heart will be there also. This is another great one in Luke. And he told them a parable. A land of rich man was very productive, and he began to think to himself, saying, what shall I do, since I have no place to store my crops? And he said, this is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones, and I will store up my grain and my goods there. And I will say to myself, you have many goods stored up for many years to come. Relax, eat, drink, and enjoy yourself. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your soul is demanded of you, and as for all that you have prepared, who will own it now? Such is the person who stores up treasure for himself and is not rich in relation to God. Luke 12. So this is where if he would have took that money, I got all this stuff. I go, I'm really set up good. I'm going to go out and, help the poor, the hungry. I'm going to, if he was to take those riches and do that, now he's laying up, because helping a person in need is creating you're saying, I could do these things and have my fun, do it this way, but I'm going to let that go and I'm going to go help that person. You're giving up the options in opulence for a good work for another person. God sees that kind of stuff. God's like, would you give? And I wish I had that verse down, but again, I'm doing this kind of in my head. Would you sacrifice for the sake of righteousness? I will repay 10 times. There's the verse where he talks about if you give of yourself, I will return back. Like if you give a bushel of wheat, the bushel you get back from God is filled up. They press it down so they can fill more in there, overflowing. You'll never lose out if you say, hey, I got this thing I want to do here, but I'm going to help this other person out. You will always come out ahead. And where's the balance of that payback? Treasures in heaven. And when it comes to the next level of living, the next area, heaven, if you will, the next up, you will be in the kingdom of heaven and not in the kingdom of hell. Now, I'm going to do a whole thing on heaven and hell too, but I only can do so much. It gets convoluted after a while. Jesus in the wilderness is an example of a battle between mammon, faith in Satan's materialism, and faith in the Father's system. Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. And after he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he then became hungry. And the tempter came to him and said, hey, you're the Son of God. If you're the Son of God, command these stones become bread. And he could. I mean, his later miracles obviously showed he could. But he said to him, it is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but in every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. The devil took him up to the holy city and had him stand on the pinnacle of the temple and said to him, if you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and on their hands they will bear you up, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. So he's tempting Jesus to use the powers of righteousness for mammonary reasons, eat, power, And Jesus said to him, on the other hand, it is written, you should not put your Lord to God to the test. And then the devil took him up to a very high mountain and showed him all the kings of the world and the glory, and said, all these things I will give you if you fall down and worship me. And Jesus said to him, go, Satan, for it is written, you shall worship the Lord your God and serve him only. And then the devil left. And behold, the angels came and began to minister to him. He was telling them, worship the system of mammon. And I'm telling you, you come to mammon, I will make you king of this earth. Jesus says, no, you will serve God and him only. And devil left, important to learn, and the angels came to minister on him. That was, if he would used his richness of power to save himself from that spiritual lesson, see how lesser he would be as an example. Jesus also demonstrated his power and authority over the world structure of mammon with his miracles, which defied the power of nature, or what we might call today the laws of physics, as sort of a proof of the inferiority of it to what God is. I mean, I'm not going to go, there's all kinds of them here. I got one line listed. You should go take the Bible and read the context of each one, the whole story. But in nature, Jesus exercised authority over the natural realm functions as a sign of his king's sovereignty over the material structure itself. When Jesus commanded the elements, he demonstrated that the matter of the created order is subject to the word of the Creator, directly contradicting the mammon-centric view that nature is a closed mechanical system to be conquered by human technology or science. And here's Matthew 8. They were all upset because they're in a boat going across the water, and he was sleeping, and they said, come, we're perishing, come help us. And he just says, Why are you timid, you man of little faith? And he arose and rebuked the wind and the sea, and all became perfectly calm. And the men marveled and said, what kind of man is this, that even the winds and the sea obey him? Because he is outside of the Mammon power system. He's Mammon down here, God system. And then I'm going to go through these quickly. You can, again, I recommend reading the stuff. It's really, to me, I get really moved when I actually read and say this stuff. 5 loaves, 2 fishes, blessed the food, and they all ate and were satisfied. And there's another idea when he came walking on the sea to him. Or in a boat, he walked on the sea to him. That's such a great one. Because in that one, Peter says, if it is you, bid me out to walk on her. Hey, if it's you, I can walk on it. You can maybe walk. So he walks out on it. He walks on it. He's walking on the water. And, and then he's like, holy cow, I'm walking on the water. Starts to go into his own, starts to leave that kingdom area of power and glory and recedes back into the physical, and he starts to sink. And Jesus doesn't berate him. He doesn't let him sit in there and choke for a while. He doesn't kind of laugh at him. He reaches down and he says, man, you owe little faith. He reaches down, touches him, and brings him right out right away. That was very meaningful to me. Again, I've only put in little bits here because there's so many of them. Curse the fig tree. Another rebuke the winds. Then there's the fish. They couldn't get any fish. And he goes, put your nets down. He goes, we just been fishing all day. Like, come on. We've been fishing all day. He goes, do it again. All kinds of fish. Change the water to wine. So there's plenty of stuff here that my point is that Jesus, in the kingdom power, has power over the system of Mammon. He could change the physics. And he says, you if you have faith, you can tell that mountain to go from here to there. I don't know if I even put that one in there. And we have the same power over the physical universe if we were in that kingdom consciousness, in that kingdom vibration. I mean, a lot of these words have been used by other, but it's true. Illness, right? So he cured illnesses. This is again, there's one line here, so you got to, really read the whole thing. A leopard comes up to him with, I know if you're willing, you would heal me. And Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him and said, I am willing, be cleansed. And he was immediately, his leprosy was cleansed. That's another one. It means a lot to me. Because he came up to him in humility. If you're willing, I know you can heal me. And he did. The centurion's a great one. Here's a Roman guy, not even a Jew, not even a son of Abraham, comes up and says, hey, I got a servant. I love him like a son. Could you come heal him for me? So obviously he believes you can heal him. He's asking for his servant, well, quote, slave, his servant. And Jesus said, I'll come with you. He goes, no, I'm not worthy enough. But I know by authority, you just say it, it'll be done. And he was marveled. He looked at the people. He goes, I've never seen this kind of faith in Israel. Go and it'll be done for you. Daughter who was supposedly dead tells, come forth. She wakes up. He tells her she's not dead. She's just sleeping. And they're all laughing at him. And then she says, Taba cum laude, I guess it is, whatever it is. And then, of course, we know about Lazarus. Called him out of the, he's been dead for days. And it's a whole mess of them here. Another one I like, paralyzed man, these people trying to get him to get healed. And couldn't get to him, so they actually cut a hole in the roof of the guy's house. Probably thatched, cut a hole in it. Lowers him down in there to get healed. Take up your bed and rise. What a great line. So, Oh, and here's the death. Then I got the ones where he raised people from the dead, showing that he's beyond the physics, healing. He creates. Not only does he control like storms and whatever, he can create food. He's about, and this is that kingdom consciousness, which he says we all could do if we had the faith of a mustard seed. Another quote from him. When Jesus had complete power and authority over the world system of mammon, he could easily have conquered the earth as the kings of mammon would do. He sought to use his abilities not to subjugate, but to serve and heal. That's another thing against the powers of mammon. Everybody in the power of mammon look for more money, higher position, more authority, more privilege. This is the goal in the power of mammon, in the system of mammon. Jesus, in Matthew 20, Jesus called them to himself and says, you know, the rulers of the Gentiles domineer over them. And those in high position exercise much authority over them. It is not the way among you, but whoever wants to become prominent among you shall be your servant. Whoever desires to be first among you shall be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and give his life as a ransom for many. They were arguing one day about who's going to be the next, who's going to be the greatest in the kingdom and all that, and he ends up taking off, stripping himself down for service. You know, takes his whole outer garment off, gets down, and he washes their feet. And he felt there's an empathy that comes with this. The kingdom consciousness is empathetic. It's not power. And this is why if you're going to excel in the mammon system, you're going to be in a corporation, you're going to have to fire people. You're going to have to try and give less of a bargain for people. You're going to have to try to make them buy more than they should. You want to try and sell it on interest so they can make even more money. You know, this is... If you want to excel in the system of mammon, you cannot excel in the system of God. I love this line. Come on, all you weary or heavy laden, I'll give you rest. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. People think they follow the teachings of Jesus. It's a lot of work. It's hard. You lose out on things. But it's actually easy. It's easy to say, no, I don't want to be part of it, and so forth. And you have to guarantee whatever you might lose out, you're going to get back anyway. So it's not even like you're losing. You're losing it here short term. It's not, I just updated this note today. I was thinking about when I was driving. Jesus stood before Pilate, and he said, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would be fighting so that I would not be handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is none of this realm. Then Pilate said to him, are you a king? Jesus answered, you say correctly that I'm a king. And for this purpose I was born, and for this purpose I have come into the world to testify to the truth. Everyone who is the truth listens to my voice. He's a king of the people who want of righteousness and truth. This is a contrast. You know, this is in contrast to the haves and haves not through the lens of the temporal versus the substantial, right? You must look and see how Jesus portrays the blessed state for those stripped of worldly material. In the kingdom, to have not is often a structural prerequisite for being freed from the gravity of mammon. Mammon pulls you to it. You can't, like, 1 foot in, sin, 1 foot out, because what happens is the foot that's in the sin pulls you into it. I think I have a quote later on here that comes up. It says, if your hand sins, cut it off. It's better to go through life with one hand. Now, I mean, it's not, I don't think it literally means cut up your hand, right? Because your brain is in charge of your hand, if you will, and your soul and your evilness is in charge. The idea is that it's a visual. The commitment to not going down that way is so strong that it's better for you to cut off whatever brings you down into that area so that you can go through. I think I have that line coming up. I'm skipping to it, but I'm just following my inner stream of consciousness. Blessed are those who are poor, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Woe to the rich, you are receiving your comfort in full. Blessed are the poor, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. If you wish to be complete, go and sell all your possessions and give it to the poor, and I will have treasure in heaven. Complete, that word's another great word to look up. Complete or perfect, perfection. If you want to be perfect as your Father's perfect, same word, be complete. If you want to reach kingdom consciousness, this for that person they talk about him. The last little hook was that gravity of mammon pulling on him. And then you have the example of the woman who put in a little penny, less than a penny, in for offering, and the other guy, the Pharisee, is standing there. I got the verse there, but it's only one little line. He's standing there going, "Thank you for not being like this guy over here." And one guy was banging his breast and said, "Forgive me, Lord, I'm a sinner." You got the other lady who was putting in a little mite. Because I truly say to you, this poor woman put more than all the other contributors in the treasury, for they put in out of their surplus, but she put in out of her poverty. She put in all she had to live on, because she's trusting in God. I read this stuff and I go, man, I talk about not there. But when you give a reception, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind, and you will be blessed, since they do not have the means to repay you. You will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteousness. They can't pay you for it. God pays, and He's got a lot better, a long-lasting, wider, more significant checkbook, so to speak. Right. Well, the poor, of course, poor can be evil, and wealth can be righteous. The warning by Jesus is very clear. To participate in the world system of mammon, there are more means to avoid the hard life lessons and introduction of more degrees or quality levels of evil, withheld from the poor simply because of their lack of wealth and power. Woe to the world because of its stumbling blocks, for it is inevitable that stumbling blocks will come. But woe to the person through whom the stumbling blocks come. And if your hand or your foot causes you to sin, cut it off, throw it away. It's better for you to enter life maimed without a foot than to have 2 hands and 2 feet and be thrown into the eternal fire. The quality, the high quality repayment, if you will, for evilness. And if your eye causes you to sin, cut it out, and so forth. Now, I put down the Beatitudes. I'll read them because it's not there. But I also have a link, a click-on link. If you get this PDF, you download the links in the notes here. You could just click on it and go right to it. But the full Sermon on the Mount is the most spiritually powerful text ever recorded in a written work. One can only imagine the power of seeing and hearing it from Jesus' own lips. So I have the link to it, Matthew 1:5-1 to Matthew 7:29. I mean, I listen to this stuff, and it's just amazing. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn. Now think about it. These are qualities of the kingdom consciousness, and if you can take it and make the opposite the qualities of the system of mammon. Blessed are the poor, for there is the kingdom of heaven. Poor in spirit. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. If you're sad about the condition of the world and how things are, that means your heart is empathetic, and it pulls this stuff in, and that's kingdom consciousness material. Blessed are the gentle, so they will inherit the earth. Gentle, kindness. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be satisfied in the kingdom of heaven. you will have the satisfaction. You will feel that righteousness will be normal and not something that you wish for and see the opposite. Blessed are the merciful, so they will see mercy. Blessed are the pure heart, so they will see God. Pure in heart, no liars. Doing things for the right reasons. They'll see God. Because if you got the wrong reasons, if you're fooling around there, the presence of God is amazing. Because it is like if you're aligned properly in love, it's a beautiful thing. Now, you're not. It's not pleasant. Just because of the energies, like, if you're gotten bad energies, that power, the good energies of that level come by. It's painful, I would say. I would imagine. So I got the full Sermon on the Mount here with that one link. The Bible Gateway is great to do, and I picked the NASB. It's my personal choice of being very accurate for studying things. All right, now, I added a little thing on here. I'm not going to go too much into this, but, this is the red letter edition, right? Meaning I'm talking about what Jesus talks about. Well, actually, let me get to that in a second. So, in summary, the system of mammon, right, it is a system of wealth and power that will prevent you or seduce you from doing what you should and learn and grow in kingdom consciousness for the next level, and it will draw you down into things that will bring you away from that kingdom consciousness. It's a dual-edged thing. You can't put your foot in a little bit, it'll drag you. You're always moving either forward or backward. And if you stick in there like that, you're going to end up moving backward. And so it's not about money, it's about attachment to money. What's that line? The love of money is the root of all evil. When Adam and Eve, when they had ate the fruit, most people say it was the fruit of the tree of knowledge, right? God didn't want us to be smart. God didn't want, and that was the devil's, the serpent's way. Hey, God doesn't want you to eat that because then you'd be like him, knowing good and evil. He doesn't want that. Eat this, the tree of knowledge. Eat the tree. Don't eat the tree of life. Eat the tree of knowledge, because then you'll be like God, knowing good and evil. And when people say that, it's the knowledge of good and evil. It's not knowledge. It's the knowledge of good and evil. So the way I read it is, if they would eat the tree of life, game over. They would have been eternally blissed. But they took the knowledge of the tree of good and evil, is what they're saying. Like, I want to know why good is good and why evil is evil. Okay? And if it can't be more clearer by looking around and seeing what's happening over the centuries on this planet, what is the end result of that? And at some point it will be over. The lesson will be shown, and then any other planets or people who want to decide to pull that question, they'll just go, hey, go check out the videotape on Earth, right? That'll stop that from going away. So that's why it's important to know mammon. It's you have to avoid it. And if you're stealing to make money, or stealing to get out of things, or stealing to do things and all that, it's still mammon. It's all in that system. Now back to this. That's the red letters. This whole point of this is just, what did Jesus say? Because what has happened over the years, this happened from Moses' time forward, and it happens from Jesus' time forward, is that human beings start to interpret things, change things, they this and that, and things come up, and they want to justify themselves, so they go back and redo things. That's why Jesus spoke poorly about the Pharisees. In fact, in the NASB, scribes is translated as lawyers, because they just didn't copy text. They were because they were literate. They were actually worked as accountants and lawyers as well. So that those things have happened. Jesus corrected the Pharisees and how they have abused and rewritten the words, the principles of God, and said, "Hey, I'm not here to change it. I'm here to restore it, and I'm going to show you, and I'm going to live it, and it's going to be here until the end. So you better learn the system, to learn the right system." And he went through and taught it. And when then, of course, the church hands off to disciples and goes down, and we get all the stuff that's happened. And all you have to do is go through the various churches' histories. People killed each other. They literally had wars because of whether the nature of Christ was man-God or God and man, and ridiculous stuff. Death. They've had wars, kill people, and Jesus is like, show me where Jesus said anywhere about war, about doing, go kill the guy. Right? Well, they go to the Old Testament for that. They go back to the Old Testament to kick ass. They go to the New Testament for forgiveness. So this is why we're doing this, to go, because if the church people say, well, it's not enough. You're saying Jesus' words aren't not enough? Are you listening to yourself? Are you listening to what you're saying? The church, you need the church. You need the church traditions, the traditions of men that change the principles of God. You're telling me I need that? I think I need Jesus. I need these things that he says, this work he's done, the salvation parts he's done, as well as the growth teaching he sends the helper to help remember those things that he said, because that's how important they are. Anyway, so, however, one disciple, I think, really got it, right? And even though it's not a red letter, to me, it's the reddest. I put it down here. As an aside, the book of James is not in the so-called red letter editions per se, but I look at it as about the reddest lettered book penned by the disciples. And so what I did was I ran some verses for it. You can read this, on your times. I've already been here an hour, so you can go through this. Download it's free download. You can download it, the link, and you can read of the stuff that James is teaching. He's saying the same principles that Jesus was saying. So I'm kind of happy my name's James. I always joke because my middle name is Arthur. My grandfather was Arthur. So I'm James Arthur. So you got two kings in one. But in reality, the disciple James is pretty good stuff. So anyway, that is that. I am looking at the next thing, and so, like, if anybody has particular questions, I'd appreciate them, because a question asked is, to me, my next thing to do. I'm questioning my own questions, and some of these things I've done in the past, and I've just fine-tuned them, and I've actually learned more, and I'm doing this. So if there's any kind of questions, I got Feet to the Fire Radio, all one word, at protonmail.com. Links are in this download. I even have started a YouTube playlist with these in particular on it. So I think I will have it in the description for the playlist, and it automatically grows each week or each time I do this. So you can check that out. So, all right, God bless you all. I hope I've been some help. And these times we're in now, one of the things I wanted to do was go through, all the prophecy stuff, because a lot of it has been, I think it's been added to and abused. And so, Jesus, red letters, there's a whole section on when the end comes and what to look forward to. And it's, but this way it's looking as possible. So anyway, this is important to learn this stuff. I think I'm just rambling. I'm just mumbling. So I'll let you go. Thank you. God bless you. And we'll see you next time.